Hello, I'm Dango Rose. Welcome to the Mountaineer Podcast, where everybody's listening. The Mountaineer brings you the latest news of the Peak to Peak region, in print, online, through our podcast, social media, and special publications. Now, listen in to the latest news of the area with our local journalists.
The song that you are currently listening to is called High Up in Colorado and is performed by 100 Pound House Cat featuring background vocals from Kaylin the Miller from Avaso. Be sure to hear this song and more on the debut 100 Pound House Cat album, Crossed Your Heart, which will be having its album release at the Gold Hill Inn located 401 Main Street in Gold Hill on Friday, June 14th, 2024, starting at 8 p.m. Members of Avaso will be performing with 100 Pound House Cat during the main event, and Snakes and Foxes, which includes members of the River Man Band, will be opening for the group. Tickets are $15 in cash. They are not available online.
Because the bitch has got a bad side, she'll turn on you just like that. She'll rain down a hot fury.
Hello, my name is Jamie Lammers, and welcome to a very special edition of the Mountaineer Podcast. This time around, we're spotlighting a local business from the Peak to Peak area. Our special guest. Do you mind introducing yourself real quick?
My name is Karl Zaunbrecher. I'm a semi-retired veterinarian, and I teach martial arts at Nederland Community Center.
And what is your martial arts school called?
It's Nederland Defensive Arts.
So how did Nederland Defensive Arts start in the first place?
I opened the school about a little over 3 years ago. I would say about 3.5 years ago. Training the martial arts for a very long time. I began training in Shorin Ryu, which is a traditional Okinawan karate, in 1997, and have been training in that art ever since. I began training in Chon Tu Kwan Hapkido, which is a different art, I think about 2002, and I have been training in that art since then. I have a 5th degree black belt in karate and a 6th degree black belt in Hapkido.
Was teaching always a part of martial arts that you always wanted to focus on?
Well, I'm not sure that's how it started out, but after a few years, I did want to be a teacher. And most martial arts schools will work on having their students potentially become teachers in the future. The saying in martial arts is every student is a teacher, every teacher is a student.
So what do you teach at Nederland Defensive Arts?
What I teach is mostly based in Chon Tu Kwan Hapkido, also called combat Hapkido. It's a strictly defensive art. I do incorporate some karate training into it because it's really not possible to separate out the martial arts and say you do this in this art and you do that in another art and there's no overlap, because there's abundant overlap in almost all of the martial arts. And so I do introduce some karate into what I teach at the school, but basically what I teach is self-defense, and that's the core of my curriculum.
And I assume that you teach your students at various different skill levels.
Well, yeah, as things go along and students become more experienced and they become more skilled, then they're introduced to more advanced ways of doing things. But like anything else, when a new student walks in and maybe they have no martial arts training or maybe they don't have any experience in this particular martial art, then you start from the beginning. Like anything else, you start with the basics. Okay, here's a simple beginning, and we build on that over the years.
What have been some of your favorite aspects about teaching over the last 3 years?
Well, my teaching actually began many, many years ago. I used to live in Lake Placid, New York. That's where most of my martial arts training took place. And I began teaching probably when I got my 1st degree black belt in karate, which would have been at least 20 years ago. And one of the things that I've enjoyed about teaching is seeing a student mature into the martial arts. And that doesn't necessarily mean, oh, they got really good at doing this kata or they really got good at that technique or whatever. It's more seeing the student mature into a self-assured person, somebody who projects an image of being able to take care of themselves, that they're not afraid. That's gold for me when I see that student begin to take on those qualities, because people see that and it just shows.
What inspired you to start Nederland Defensive Arts in the first place?
Well, I was living in Lake Placid, as I said before, and decided to retire from veterinary medicine in 2019, and my partner and I decided, well, we can live pretty much anywhere we want. And I had seen the Front Range many years ago when I was in college, fell in love with the Rockies, and we decided this is where we would like to live. And so I thought, retired from the martial arts at that time. And It didn't take a year for me to say, no, this is not working for me. I really miss the teaching. I really miss the martial arts overall. And so I decided to open a school in Hapkido, which was, like I said, strictly defensive. I used to teach traditional Okinawan karate as well, and for a while that was the only thing that I taught. I decided to, at this point in my career, put all of my emphasis into the practical application of the martial arts, which not everybody does. It's called an art because it's not a science, it's an art. And some people just love the beauty of the art, and some people love martial arts for competition, which I have done. But I decided rather than teach competitive martial arts or teach it just purely as an art, I decided to look at the practical aspects of the martial arts. And the practical aspects of the martial arts is, well, I can defend myself if I know how to do this. And so I look only at applied martial arts and how a person who learns, for example, Chon Tu Kwan Hapkido, can defend themselves if they get into trouble and get out of trouble. But it's not a competitive art, so there's no Hapkido tournaments, for example, but it is something that a student can actually use in their everyday life if they have the misfortune to be attacked or to get into trouble or to be in a dangerous situation.
How do you structure a typical class at Nederland Defensive Arts?
Well, like most classes, we begin with a formal, we bow in, we have a little warm-up. That's the only really ritualistic part of the class that I have. Some schools are very rigid about we do this in this order and then we do that. And I've been in schools like that, and that's fine. My school is more laid back. Once we finish our little warm-up, that only takes 10 minutes or so, then I may spend some time and have the students, sit and stretch, and we'll talk a little bit. And I talk about the philosophy of what I teach, which is don't get into trouble, don't get into fights, and under what circumstances are you allowed to defend yourself legally and morally? How much harm are you able to do to another person in a situation where you feel like you're in danger? So we'll spend a little time on that. And then I will often ask the students, okay, what would you like to work on today? And we do have a curriculum for your next advancement, the next belt level. You are required to learn certain techniques and have certain abilities. But I also want my students to ask me questions and give me a lot of, well, what if? What if this happens? What should I do? And they will often challenge me on that because sometimes I don't know the answer. And when that happens, I tell them I don't know. And then I tell them I will get an answer for you and I'll answer it in the next class. That's what I mean when I say every student is a teacher and every teacher is a student. I have learned 10 times as much about the martial arts after I started teaching than before because my students challenge me to learn.
And I've heard that you use the term female-friendly to describe your classes. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. Well, female-friendly just makes sense. This is an art that does not require a person to be strong. You're not going to be coming to class and getting yelled at and doing push-ups. That's not the kind of class it is. It is a class that's built around people who are not big, who are not strong, who are not athletic, and yet being able to defend themselves. And that includes pretty much everybody. Anybody who walks into my school with a sincere desire to learn is welcome. But the important thing is what I teach does not require strength. It does not require athletic ability. I often tell a student, if you feel like you're using strength to do this, stop and think. You need to make some changes because this isn't about strength. This is about using your attacker's strength and body mass and size and aggression against them.
What safety measures do you use during the classes?
Well, safety is number one. Rule number one is never injure a student. And it's extremely rare for injuries to happen in our class. It's not a knitting class. Occasionally somebody will get a bump or a bruise, but we're very safety oriented. One of the first things that students are expected to learn, for example, is how to fall down. Because some of the things that we teach involve takedowns. You're going to take your attacker down to the floor, and that means that if you're practicing, somebody's going to have to be the person who gets taken down. So one of the first things they're taught is, okay, here's how to fall safely. And I also tell them that if you're lucky, then you will never have to use the self-defense that I teach you. But falling down, people fall down all the time. People get hurt badly falling down all the time. If you know how to fall correctly, and that's what you learn first, then you're a lot less likely to get injured and fall. So that's basically, and like I said, also my philosophy is never injure a student.
Has there been an experience over the last 20 years or so that you've been teaching that has been particularly rewarding to you?
Well, I mentioned seeing my students mature into people who have self-confidence, who are sure of themselves, but it would be hard to point out any one particular instance, except to say that when my students ask me a question, usually a what-if question, they force me to learn because I feel an obligation to answer their question. They're asking me that question because, well, this is something I'm concerned about. I'm afraid X might happen to me, and what should I do if it does? And now I have to come up with an answer, and it has to be a realistic answer, and it has to be something that they can do, something that falls within their capabilities to affect an escape from this situation. And that's what I mean by my students force me to be a student, because they force me to learn by asking questions. The other thing is that I will often have students come into my class, and one of the first things I'll ask is, well, do you have any previous experience in the martial arts? And when I say the martial arts, I define that very broadly. I've had a student who was a fencer, and she was very good at fencing, and I was able to learn things from her that applied to the martial arts. Students who have been in other martial arts, students who have been athletes in sports that have nothing whatsoever to do with the fighting arts, students who have been boxers. I've had students who were bouncers, who were police officers or correctional officers, and I was able to learn from them, and in some cases incorporate what I learned from them into my classes and pass that on to the other students. So it's very much a shared learning experience.
How can people sign up for the class, and what can they expect to find when they join?
Well, our classes are at the Nederland Community Center from 5:30 to 7 on Mondays and Wednesdays. And basically, people are welcome to just walk in. If they want to just walk in and watch a class, they're welcome to do that, and they can sit down and watch. They can ask questions. If they want to take part in class, then they are allowed to do so if that's what they wish. And they begin with, like anything else, of course, there's an insurance waiver. You can't start a class without paperwork, and that's true of almost everything you do. But then they will begin with warming up a little bit, stretching a little bit. I'll ask them questions about any previous experience they have, and then we'll get right into, okay, we'll start with some basic, here's how to fall down and not get hurt. Let's look at that. And then let's look at, okay, here's a very simple escape to do. Somebody grabs you by the wrist. How do you get out of that situation? That person's bigger and stronger than you. You can't pull away from them. You can't make them break their grip. How do you get out of that? And showing them that simple escape is where we start with the basics. Don't resist, because you can't resist somebody who's stronger than you. You can't outmuscle somebody who's stronger than you, but you can outsmart them, and they don't get to defy the laws of physics. If you put them in a position where they want to let go, and obviously I can't demonstrate that without actually showing it, then they want to let go, and that's where the principles are. When you're pushed, you pull. When you're pulled, you're pushed. Don't use strength. Use their strength against them, and use your body core. Use your repositioning. Move. Those are all basic things, and those are not complicated things, and most people can pick it up fairly quickly because it's not complex. It doesn't take 50 years to learn this. It just takes a desire to learn.
Are there any materials that students need to bring to class, or do they just need to bring themselves?
Just bring themselves. I usually say, wear what you would wear to a yoga class. Wear something comfortable and gives you freedom of movement. And other than that, you pretty much just show up. No, you don't need any special equipment. Any equipment that we might use, we have it. We have, for example, plastic knives that look real. Obviously, they won't hurt anybody. Well, okay, now we're going to work on, what do we do if somebody pulls out a knife? And so, well, okay, here's a knife, but it's plastic. It's not going to hurt you. And in a safe way, you can learn how to deal with that. That's an example. But as far as equipment is concerned, the only equipment that some students do end up buying for themselves is a bow. And when I say bow, a lot of people go right to bow and arrow. What does that have to do with martial arts? But I'm talking about bow as in, with Donatello, I think, and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's the only traditional Okinawan weapon that I teach. And the reason I teach it is because you're not going to carry around a sword. You're not going to carry around sai or nunchaku. But a bow's a stick. If you pick up a broom, you've got a bow. So that's actually a very practical thing to learn to use in a self-defense situation.
I've heard something about a free training offer in the first month. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, I want to make sure that the school is a good fit for the student, and I'm perfectly happy to say, okay, you come for 1 month of training. I'm not going to charge you anything. You don't need a uniform. And if you decide that the school is right for you, then welcome aboard, and we're happy to have you.
The question that I asked initially was, are there any resources that you want students to use if they want to learn more? The answer evolved into something more along the lines of, is there anything you would want students to bring to your class?
Well, not particularly. Basically, you bring yourself. I'm not teaching you this is how you use a weapon in this way. Yourself, your body, is your weapon of self-defense. You learn how to use your arms and your legs and your head and your body core and your movement. Those are the things that you use to defend yourself, because those are weapons no one can ever take away from you. So that's all you need to bring.
Do you have any plans for expanding the school at the moment?
I would consider it. Yeah, not at this time, but I might consider that in the future, depending on where the school goes from here. Right now, it's a relatively small school, and I have a very good core of students. And as far as expanding the school, I don't have any plans for that in the near future, but I may at some point.
I end up asking all of my guests this, whether they're musicians or whether they're martial arts teachers. Is there anything in particular that you hope students will be able to take away from your classes when they come to learn about martial arts from you?
I think the most important thing I would like for for a student to take from my class is not so much I know how to do this technique or I know how to make somebody let go of me if they touch me. I think the most important thing I would like for them to take away is I feel confident, I feel empowered, I feel like I don't have to be afraid because I can take care of myself.
Is there anything else you'd like to add before we sign off for the week?
Well, one of the very few restrictions I have on who can join the class is an age restriction. This is not appropriate for young children. It involves things like joint locks, which are very dangerous to do to people whose bones have not fully developed. And the youngest student that I will allow is 14. I guess I might make a rare exception for someone who's a little bit younger if, say, a parent were to take the class with them, but not much younger than that. Generally, students need to be about 14 years old to begin the training because of safety issues. After that, the top age is 101, I guess. If you are healthy and you feel like you can do what you need to do to take the class, do it, and you're welcome. And the only other thing I would want to add as far as restrictions is there are none as far as, and this is stated in my policy that I hand out to new students, and I'm going to quote it because it's important. Everyone is welcome, regardless of gender, race, color, religion, country of origin, or orientation. If you have a problem with that policy, this school is not right for you. Well, the only other thing I want to point out is there is a stereotype about martial arts schools, and I think a lot of it comes from, God help us, Cobra Kai, which you've probably heard of. Martial arts schools, well, I suppose there are still a few idiotic exceptions. They don't look like that anymore. 30, 40 years ago, that may be what martial arts schools looked like, where the teacher yells at you and you do push-ups and you get beat up. And that is childish nonsense. We don't do that anymore. And my attitude in class is, you're an adult, I'm an adult, let's all act like it. We're here to learn, and let's learn stuff. And let's all treat each other with respect and dignity.
Thank you so much to Sensei Karl for coming on board and joining us for the podcast. If you want to learn more about martial arts from someone with a 5th degree black belt in Shorin Ryu karate, a 5th degree black belt in Chon Tu Kwan Hapkido, and 24 years experience in the martial arts, then head to Nederland Defensive Arts, located at the Nederland Community Center at 750 Peak to Peak Highway in Nederland. You can also contact Karl directly at 518-637-3106 or by emailing him at Karl Zaunbrecher, that's KarlZaunbrecher @gmail.com. For more information online, head to mountainpeaklife.org/Nederland-Defensive-Arts or head to Facebook and find their page on Nederland Defensive Arts. The song that you are currently listening to is called Hers Don't Shake, and it's recorded by 100 Pound House Cat, featuring background vocals from Kaylin the Miller from Avaso. You can hear this song and more on the brand new debut album of 100 Pound House Cat, Crossed Your Heart, which will be having an album release party on Friday, June 14th, 2024, starting at 8 p.m. at the Gold Hill Inn, located at 401 Main Street in Gold Hill. Members of Avaso will be performing with 100 Pound House Cat during the main event, and Snakes and Foxes, which consists of members of the River Man Band, will be opening for the event. Tickets are $15 in cash. There are no online tickets available.
Just like Jack Horner, you in the corner, you got your eye on a piece of that pie. You itsy bitsy spider, you sat beside her, and now you're stuck with all them girls that way. Oh hey, yeah, yeah, you're gonna change your mind, yeah, 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 you know.
And that's it for our show. Subscribe online to get more access to more news, weekly updates to our community calendar, and a link to our YouTube channel by visiting themountaineer.com. Be sure to use the coupon code PODCAST when subscribing for a 10% discount, only available to our listeners. If you are in the local peak-to-peak area, be sure to pick up a print edition of The Mountaineer at a local business. I'm Dango Rose. Thank you for listening.